guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to go ahead and talk about some recent nonfiction books that I have completed. And I'm not somebody that really reads a lot of nonfiction. It's not because I don't want to or because I don't like it. It's just not a genre that I typically gravitate towards. And recently I have been watching a lot of other booktubers that do read a lot of nonfiction. And I have found that they are reading some books that I'm actually interested in. And I have picked up a lot of nonfiction. I have clearly read some that I am interested in and have actually liked. I have kind of decided that I do want to start reading a lot more nonfiction, and I'm going to make some separate videos geared specifically toward nonfiction reads. And I think I'm going to kind of make that a thing here on my channel. So this is going to be my first video geared specifically toward nonfiction reads. So we are going to go ahead and get started. So the first book that I want to talk about is 400 Souls. And this is a collection of short stories that is geared around the African American history that is told from the years 1619 through 2019. And all of the authors, which all of the authors are listed here on the back, all of the authors that have contributed to this book, they all had to pick a 5-year time period that was between 1619 through 2019. And within those 5 years, they had to either write about a specific historic figure or a specific historic event. And then this book was split up into parts. So every 40 years between 1619 and 2019, we got a poem that summed up those 40 years that those authors wrote about. And I really liked the format of this book. I thought it was really interesting, and there's a lot of good information. So obviously this book is covering a lot of years, so we are really getting some surface level information, but it's really good information. And the way that this was structured, I think it kept the story really interesting. And even though I felt like a lot of this stuff I've either heard about, read about, or had heard about and maybe forgotten about, it was still really interesting. So we actually start off obviously at 1619. So we're starting off from the slave ships getting over here, and we are ending in 2019, which was the creation of like the Black Lives Matter movement. So, and then everything in between. And I ended up, oh, you can't really see it, but I ended up going to town with my annotations in this book. I really enjoyed a majority of these stories. I will say, with so many authors contributing to this work, we have a lot of different writing styles. I tended to gravitate more of the authors that seem to be telling more of a story with the time period that they chose over the authors that I felt like were just spewing out a lot of facts. I can appreciate a lot of the facts that they were giving us, but I just would prefer somebody trying to tell me a story. I tend to take that information in better than somebody just giving me a whole bunch of numbers and statistics. I will say, if you are somebody that doesn't really know about a lot of our African American history, this is a good place to start. Like I said, it's covering a lot of information. It's covering a lot of time. So you are definitely just getting a basic level understanding. So this will be a good place to start, and you will be able to get a really basic level understanding, and then you will be able to do your own additional research from there. And then the poems in here were great. Like I said, after every 40 years, we would get a poem that was summarizing what happened within those previous 40 years. So some of those were really great. Again, some of those were better than others. But that is also due to preference. I'm also not somebody that likes a lot of poetry. So take that for what it's worth. But I did enjoy a lot of that. I also tended to gravitate more towards the stories that had to do with the events over the stories that were dealing with specific people. There were a couple of people that I did highlight in here, but more so I kind of annotated the events that took place in our history. But overall, I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the format of this. I loved what the authors were doing here. At the end of this book, a big chunk of this book at the end, it does give you a quick biography of each of the authors that contributed to this work, which I really appreciated. Some of these authors I have heard of before, a lot of them I have not, but it does give you a quick rundown of the things they have worked on previously. So if you liked what they did here and you want to check out some of the other things they have written previously or are currently working on, you can definitely check that out in the back of this book. But this is something that I would definitely check out. And this is one of those books that I had my eye on for a while. And I had finally just went ahead and picked it up. And I'm so happy that I did. This is also one of those books that I really took my time with this one. Each of the stories are actually only maybe like 2 or 3 pages, no longer than 3 pages long. So I literally probably read about 2, maybe 3 pages a day. So it did take me a little while to read it. But I did take my time. I did want to annotate this one. So I would highly recommend this. So the next book that I want to talk about was a recommendation that I got from my dad, who said that he read this when he was younger, or at least a long time ago. And he actually bought this for me and sent it to me and told me that I would really like it. And I did like it for the most part. And that is Monster, the autobiography of an LA gang member by Sonika Shakur, aka Monster Cody Scott. Wow, that was a mouthful. And so this is actually a memoir. And I'm going to call this man Cody Scott because that's just easier for me to say. And so this is basically the story of Cody Scott, as he is a gang member in LA and he is part of the LA Crips. And he is just basically telling his life as he grew up as a gang member in the Crips and as he is in and out of jail, and basically what his life was like. And so this is a very real, raw look at what it is like being a gang member. This is very violent. This is very graphic. If you do not like violence or graphicness in your stories, I am not sure that you would like this, because he does not hold back in the things that he talks about. And for what this is, I can actually appreciate that, because when you have a memoir, I mean, if that's what happened to you, tell it like it is. Like, you can't hold back. If that's your story, then that's your story. You can't sugarcoat it for other people. So I can appreciate somebody for telling their true story. I ended up rating this story a 3 stars. And for the most part, the reason why I rated it 3 stars is because I just kind of felt like this story was really repetitive in my opinion. And I hate saying that because it's hard to tell somebody how to tell their story. And it's hard to rate a memoir because it's hard for me to tell somebody how their story should be, I guess, if that makes sense. But he started off in the LA Crips very young. I believe he was in like elementary school, and he was basically in and out of jail from elementary school until like I believe this goes until like his early 20s. And when he's not in jail, I feel like this story is very like fast paced. A lot's happening. He is, telling us a lot of what's going on with him out on the streets. But when he gets to jail and when he's in and out of juvie, not a lot. I mean, a lot's happening while he's in jail at certain points, but I feel like the story slows down a lot when he's in and out of juvenile, when he's in and out of juvie, and when he's in and out of jail. And so when we get to those parts, the story really slows down a lot. And so I think this kind of has a lot of pacing issues for me. Like I said, again, I hate to say that because it's hard to judge somebody's story. But besides that, I do think this story is very interesting, and I would recommend this to people who aren't afraid or who can handle the graphic nature in this story, because there is a lot of obviously gang violence. There's a lot of murder at a really young age. There's a lot of crazy things that he talks about, and a lot of things that he goes through. He talks a lot about the feud that goes on between the Crips and the Bloods. He talks about a lot of the feuds that goes on between inside the Crips themselves. And then obviously there's a lot of shady things that goes on between the gangs and the police. Shocker there. And then he kind of talks about how even within like his friend group, how they kind of started turning on each other. So this was just a really interesting story. Like I said, the biggest part for me was just how repetitive it got, and like the pacing issues. And then kind of towards the end, I would say probably like the last like 70 pages or so, this really slowed down for me, and it was really kind of hard to get through like this last 70 pages. And then he did start to turn his life around towards the end. That's why he ended up changing his name. So his name, he went by Monster Cody Scott, and the monster part came from when he entered in the gang. They all started getting nicknames, and boy, some of these nicknames were crazy. And Monster was actually a pretty good nickname, because some of these other nicknames, there ain't no way you would be calling me some of these nicknames. I wish I could find you some of these nicknames they got, because no. They were crazy. They just didn't sound like a nickname a boy would want to be called out in the streets. I wish I would have like taken note of some of them, because they were kind of funny. But Monster, he seemed to have gotten one of the better ones. So yeah, so he ended up getting that name while he was out on the streets. And then once he started trying to turn his life around, he got into Islam, is when he changed his name to Sanyika Shakur. And that's what he goes by now. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting read. I'm actually happy that my dad suggested this book to me, and he sent it to me. So I'm really happy for that, because this was interesting. And we did have some good conversations around this one. So I would actually recommend this one. And then the last book that I read that I feel like everybody has been reading, and I got this one from Book of the Month, and that is Will by Will Smith. I'll just say my rating from the top. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm a little bit biased with that rating because I absolutely love Will Smith. I've always loved Will Smith from way back in the day. So him putting out a book, I was actually surprised that this was a book, that Book of the Month actually had this one. And so I knew that I had to get it, and I was going to read it right away. I really wanted to read this or listen to it on audiobook, but it was like the wait for this on audio was forever, and I didn't have that kind of time. So I just went ahead and read it physically. But I'm pretty sure at some point I'm going to listen to this on audio, because everyone says he does a great job narrating this, and I'm sure he does. But I obviously 5 out of 5 stars. I love this. A lot of this, obviously, it's about his life. It's another memoir. A lot of the stories in here, we already have heard them before. Will has always been an open book, so a lot of this was not new. Some of it was new, but I just liked reading him talk about his life, his relationship with his father, the relationship his father had with his mother. That was new. I don't think I've ever heard him talk about that, but that was new to me. His relationships, his romantic relationships that he's had, how he met Jada, how he met his first wife, his career, his music career. I didn't realize how much music he actually put out. I don't know if it was just because I was young and just didn't realize it, or just didn't really pay attention to it. But I just didn't realize how big of a music career Will Smith actually had. And then just like, you know, hearing about his acting career and just, you know, learning about his life. I just really like this, and just, you know, I annotated this. You know, he has a lot of knowledge. It's Will freaking Smith. Like, I mean, you know. Now, I will say that even though I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, I don't think that this was a perfect book. I do think that there were some things that I wish were in here, and some things that I think that were kind of like glossed over that I wish wasn't. One of the things that I wish that was in this book that is not, that I thought was, because I thought I heard in an interview that it was in here, and that was the situation with the first mother on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Janet Hubert, I believe. And, you know, if you don't know, but it was that situation where I believe she was either fired or let go, but she was no longer the mother, Aunt Viv, on the show anymore. And he took a lot of heat for that, and I believe she blamed him for that. And they did make up, and I know they had like their 30th reunion special or whatever, and they talked about it. But I was hoping that he would have mentioned it in his book and talked about it, and we could have really heard it from his side, especially since he was the one that took a lot of the blame, and I believe she blamed him a lot for that. But it wasn't mentioned in this book at all, and I really wished it was. So some stuff I kind of wish we could have got some explanation for. But I understand with these kind of books, you can't really go into everything, because these books would be forever if people, you know, talked about every little thing in their life. So I get it, but it's like one of those things that I just wish certain things, you know, he would have talked about. But needless to say, I still gave this 5 stars. I still loved it. Like I said, it's Will freaking Smith. So, like I said, I'm biased on this. So take this review for what it's worth. But I freaking love this. And I also found myself like at certain things that he was talking about. So when he was talking about when he was making, you know, Men in Black, and how big that movie was, and how, you know, he was like one of the first people that had a big movie that came out and a big song. So like the Men in Black song. So of course, like after I read that part, I had to go on YouTube and find the song and listen to the song. Yes, I was one of those people. And then for his 50th birthday, you know, he went bungee jumping. Yes, I had to go on YouTube and look at that video again. So yes, I'm one of those fans. So everything like he talked about, I had to go look it up. So I really enjoyed this. If you have not picked this up, I would definitely pick this up. If you are a Will Smith fan, pick this up. You will not be disappointed. So I really enjoyed this one. So that is all that I have for you guys. Again, I have a lot of other nonfiction books that I will be reading here shortly, and I will continue to make other videos that will be geared specifically toward nonfiction reads. So those will be coming your way soon. And that is all that I have for you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.